Back here with On the Hash with Hatfield, our football podcast from the Plex, and we're so pleased to be joined by a special guest. He is the head football coach of the Atlantic Shores Seahawks. He's led them to glory, state championship glory, in fact, and a lot of years at the helm there, and we'll go through his background and say about this team for this coming season. It's already underway, 2-0 start for his Seahawks as they have their home opener at the Plex coming up on Friday night against the Ambassadors of Norfolk Christian. We say hello to our good pal, Coach Wayne Lance. Coach, good to see you. How's life treating you here in this summer? I'm wearing the Miami Heat jersey just because I want to represent how hot it is outside, and I know you all have felt it these last few days.
Yeah, it's cooking, but that's this time of year. Kind of prep for it and plan for it through the summer. And man, considering the spring we had and how I wouldn't even call that a spring. It was just kind of like winter up until the summer, and it's taken a little bit to get used to.
For sure. Now, let's talk about your team a little bit and what also, brought you to Atlantic Shores, because this is year what for you at the helm of the Seahawks?
17.
17. And for those that don't know, you've got a background that extends all the way back to Lynchburg. And fill the audience in on that as we'll dive into the players to watch out for in this matchup coming up if you can.
Started my coaching career at EC Glass High School under Bo Henson. I was a volunteer ninth grade coach. And the irony is when I was a student at Liberty, the logical thing was to go to LCA and say, hey, I'm a student at Liberty. And I didn't understand that at the time, like how many people must go do that. And so they were like, no, we're good. And so I was kind of hurt by that. I didn't really know what to do. And I had a friend who's student teaching at EC Glass, and he's like, just go talk to Coach Henson. I'm sure he'd take it. I'm like, and they had just lost to Ronald Curry in the state championship the year before. And I'm like, I can't imagine some kid from Liberty just walking in there. And so I walked in, and I didn't know who I was talking to. If you ever met Coach Henson, he kind of has this presence that he's just a good guy. And he's like, I said, I'm looking for Coach Henson. He's like, who are you? And I introduced myself. He goes, I'm Coach Henson. And I was like, oh, great. I blew it. I was stammering, stuttering. And he's like, all right, I'll think about getting you a spot. He goes, I may have my freshman coach call you. So I was a volunteer freshman line coach. Never played the offensive line. But I see all these little things as I came up, things I would not have normally coached that I was allowed to coach or told to coach, and how that's kind of shaped my view of football. And so some of those base principles are still with me till this day. So I started there, was a freshman coach. Then I was a head freshman coach the next year. Then I moved my way up to varsity and finished as a defensive coordinator at 27 years old. And then there was a change in coaches. I was one of the guys up for the position, but I knew at 27 that was a long shot at the time. And so that summer, the job at what was then Lynchburg Christian Academy came open. They had won 7 games in 3 years. And so it was July. I got the job 2 weeks before practice started and just started building a program. So was able to be there for 3 years as the head coach. And then I moved to Indiana. My wife's initially from Argus, Indiana, which they have one stoplight still to this day. But they're probably the last small school team in 1978 to make the Final Four. So if you know your Indiana basketball history.
Nice.
The 78 Final Four team is still celebrated in town. There is a restaurant you can go to that's got the girls' state championship team, and the Argus Dragons are still hitting the ones that are still with us, I think, are still on the parade tour every year. So, but I went to Kokomo High School in Kokomo, Indiana. Coached there, was the head coach for 3 years. It was a 5A school, and then made my way when the Shores job came open. They had 4 coaches in 2 years. I was the 4th coach in 2 years. They had a coach. They hired a coach. He was here for a week, decided this ain't for me. The AD took over as the head coach. And by the end of the year, he had already posted it. I thought, man, I could hardly ever beat those guys when I was at LCA. It's got to be a factory down there. Then I got here and thought, where'd everybody go? It was pretty rough, but I've been here ever since.
Yeah, and you've done a wonderful job there, and it's a pretty special place, as you know, at Atlantic Shores, to be there as long as you have. Did you envision you to be there, going on, I guess you could say, 2 decades worth? It's been multiple decades in your sense, but did you ever envision that, A, and then B, what's kept you there being such a unique place? Because I'm sure you've had other opportunities to go to, be it a private school in the state or outside the state, public school, but you've stayed there with the Seahawks. What's kept you there?
I think family, opportunities. I think when I first got here, I was still young at the time. I guess that's probably the best way to put that. But I was just trying to build something because I had seen it done at LCA, and then went through the struggles of being a 5A program in Indiana, and just seeing how that worked. And I thought, I want to make this something. And then having my own kids come through school and being able to be a part of their lives, I think that was probably one of the things that at least kept me at this level. And I really enjoyed the people here. Like, it's the environment, the people, but probably family most of all. I had been fortunate enough when I was the head coach at LCA that 5 of the Liberty staff members who were coaching at that time had different coaches or kids on my staff, or kids on my team. So one of the things that I was able to do was see how that impacted their lives. Like Coach Rocco, who's now the head coach there, he was the OC at Liberty. His son Chris was my quarterback, and so I watched, when Frank would have to go and recruit Western Pennsylvania, and we had a game, and how he was able to keep up with that. And I constantly had that in my head, that if there was an opportunity for me to move up, what I would be missing. And there were times I had applied for GA positions and done interviews, and opportunities I had to maybe move up to the college level. And every time my family was going to win out on that, because I'd watched other families do it. Obviously, a ton of colleges do that. But at the same time, for me, and what was best for my family was to be in an environment that I felt was encouraging and conducive, and to work for Mike Hudgens and Ed Bruno and Gary Carlson and Dave Garrett and those guys. Like, they're always encouraging of us and what we do and how we try to grow kids. And so this has been a special place to me, and just to be a part of that.
For sure. And one of the names that we've highlighted, it's going across our ticker of key stat leaders for the Seahawks, is the quarterback, Micah Lance, who, if I'm not mistaken, statistically so far, a couple of games in the books, 11 touchdowns, 1 intercept, 512 yards. And I imagine Pops is also proud of the completion percentage while also taking care of the football. He's got a bright future, does he not?
Yeah, he does. He does. He's been my sidekick probably the longest, of all the kids. 2 of my kids are out of high school now. One is playing volleyball at Chowan. Jaden is now in Lynchburg and over at Liberty. And I've got a senior daughter who's a volleyball player as well, and a track runner. They're all different. They've all had different parts in this whole thing. But at the same time, Mike has kind of been the guy. Every now and then this time of year, I'll get those Facebook memories of him, like, picking up stuff at the field, or he was like 4 and he would set up practice. All I had to do was give him a list and say, these are the drills today. And we'd walk out. Not only was the bags out, but like, they'd be set up. He was driving a golf cart at 5. So, like, in a way, he's kind of known where everything is and how things go. So it was a great help to me, but he's kind of just been with me through the whole thing. The other kids were like, no, we want to go home. Mike is like, can I go with Dad? And so, it's been it's been fun, but we try to keep that relationship like more business-like. And I've learned, actually, after having 2 kids, like, try to leave it here, not come home. And we'll have those few conversations on the car on the way home. Like, I really like this route better than this route against this coverage. I'm like, yeah. And so we'll work those things out, but it's been fun. He's done a good job, especially as a younger guy coming into a program after Damien. And I think his relationship with Damien, who's graduated at Wagner, even when Damien comes back, he'll call Micah, hey, I want to throw, you ready to go? And they'll work on some things. So it's not so much been my relationship with Micah, but the other guys the big brothers he's had over the years, from Ryan Chamberlain to Chase Larman to Damian Maisel, and go on from there. So, yeah, he's done pretty well. And he's got a good group of guys. Like, most of the guys he's throwing to, he's come up with. Chris Higgins, they were playing 7-on-7 during the COVID year at the Sportsplex. Josh Sibley and him have been in class together since first grade. And Corey Williams, Corey's dad, Sean, was once my assistant coach. The boys would come over and play while we had coaches meetings. So there's a connection with each of those guys, and they've been throwing balls with each other forever. So it's a lot of fun.
And you mentioned players at the next level, Damian Maisel, obviously at Wagner. We saw Caden Beatty, what a force he was for the last couple of years in the trenches, now in the MAC at Kent State. And you've got among some of the players getting recruited for the next level, one that's committed, I do believe, to William & Mary. I see 13 tackles, 5 for loss, and Nathaniel McDonald. Tell us more about him and some of these other contributors, what they've done for you so far in his 2-0 start. I know McDonald is a game changer from what we saw a season ago.
Yeah, Nate has been a guy, man. He's been here forever. He was that middle schooler with size 15 shoes, and I was like, if he grows into these things, it's going to be amazing. But yeah, he's just been a steady force over the years and continued to learn and grow as he's grown into his body. So he's a great edge guy. I would love to play him at tight end if you could see the man move and catch. But he's been a force for us on the offensive line as well. So he kind of steadies the ship. He makes sure everybody's in the right place. Great leadership skills and talent. Defensively, obviously coming off the edge, and we've done some things where we've played him at outside linebacker as well. So we can move him around in different places. And that's kind of a key for us, making sure our guys can play multiple positions, because sometimes you're a defensive end in high school and you're an off-ball linebacker in college, or you're a tight end or a fullback. And so, he's been outstanding. And I think everybody knows that. So developing the guys around him. Patrick Linton is another guy playing the offensive line who we've moved around a little bit on defense. Pat is tenacious. He plays with great leverage, great hands, just has a hunger for the game. Cody Batts, obviously, is probably our top linebacker returning. Cody's a 6 foot, 220-pound linebacker. We use him in spots on offense as well. So those three primarily have kind of anchored the interior, the from the edge on in. Isaac Cohen's been a 3 or 4 year guy for us on the offensive line, and now he's getting his chance to kind of take over in Caden's place on defense. He's done a fantastic job. Jack Weaver played a lot of linebacker for us a year ago. He's also our starting running back, so he's in the box as a linebacker. So we've done a couple things. We've had kind of 4 or 5 other guys getting in that rotation, especially when it's been hot. It's been incumbent upon us as coaches to make sure we can get a bunch of guys in the game and give them experience, especially early before we get into the meat of the schedule with Norfolk Christian, North Cross, Catholic, and SA. And then it just becomes murderer's row after a certain point in time here.
Having the opportunity and the privilege to call a number of your games, you all play a fun brand of football, pretty up-tempo, wide open. So if you like passing and moving the ball around, spreading it out, it's neat for the fans to check out. So what can the audience expect from your team against Norfolk Christian as you dissect the film of them and their strengths and how this matchup sort of looks on paper or on film, which, doesn't always, materialize in a game, but what's kind of your assessment of it from afar and also in depth as a coach?
I think the biggest thing with Norfolk Christian, they've really improved up front. They are huge up front, and their running back, he's been amazing to this point. Tristan has done a great job carrying the ball. He's kind of a battering ram in there. They're going to hit gaps inside, and he may bounce it outside or cut it back. And he's been tremendous for them, and they're a huge part of what they're doing. So I think to that point, with their size, they have a left-handed quarterback who's been very consistent. He's been able to spread the ball around through a couple receivers. Defensively, they are attacking. They use their size up front to be able to control the line of scrimmage, and then use their athleticism in the back end to keep everything in the right place. I think Coach Rice has done a great job on the defensive side over there. So it will be good. We match athletes very well. They probably have a size advantage, so I'm sure they'll be looking to take advantage of that. And that's really not anything new for us. We kind of deal with a lot of teams with a lot of size over the course of the year. So, I think the key is obviously their running game for them offensively and their size up front and their athletes in the secondary. So it should be a good matchup for us. They've come out both weeks. They won at Manio, and I know Manio is a long time 1A state power down in North Carolina, and then Fredericksburg Christian last week. That was a 17-6 game in the fourth quarter. I think it was 10-0 at the half, and obviously, a year ago that was not the case. It was a runaway, and Fredericksburg Christian very talented. So obviously the gap has closed, and they're doing what they do very well.
I'll get you on this one and appreciate the time coming on as our first football coaching guest on the Hash with Hatfield here from the Plex. As you look at the team here 2 games in, what area would you pinpoint you need to show some improvement? You've been very dominant thus far, off to a nice start. As you look at, beyond, because certainly you're going to have that run to the playoffs where people expect another championship push from your team. And then to follow that up, if you can, for the audience that's not familiar, how it works for the VISAA in your division for the postseason, because some get to that November point and they say, how does this work? It's a little different than what happens with the VHSL and public school for football.
It is, and that's something we've continued to work on. I think as far as the improvement standpoint, just executing better, and working on tempo and tackling. And, I think a lot of people can get caught in the mirage and smoke and mirrors, I guess is the best way to put it, of offensive and defensive football. But I think I learned long ago, I don't know if it was watching all the NFL films I watched it growing up as a kid, but it was probably Vince Lombardi, the guy right there. It was one of those things, football comes down to blocking, tackling, running, catching. It's like the most fundamental of things. And then how you put that together. So I think for us, it's a continuation of blocking, tackling, getting off blocks, running, catching the ball, being efficient, not turning the ball over, creating turnovers. It's so basic in some senses. Obviously, each team presents a different matchup. How we approach Norfolk Christian, I tell a lot of people our game plans are like snowflakes. Each one is unique because each team presents a different aspect. So when I look at Norfolk Christian compared to North Cross, compared to Nansman Suffolk, compared to Catholic, like there are some similarities and then there are a huge amount of differences. So for us, it's just a matter of pulling out those aspects and figuring which one's going to work best. As far as a playoff push or how the playoffs work, we've kind of morphed it over the years. We used to have a point system, and it was one of those things where teams started taking advantage of the point system. You could schedule around certain teams and end up in a place where, you were in and maybe another team that might be deserving is out. So we started using a committee, much like all the other VISAA sports, where we use those metrics provided for us. We have used a coach's poll. Sometimes emotions get into those things. So we've done a pretty decent job of figuring out the Final Four, and now most of us will play each other. So for the last couple of years, we've had a few times where maybe someone didn't play each other, and now you're taking the points and using those and making your best guess as to who would be the better team if they were to make it in as a 4 seed per se. So the top 4 teams in each division make it. There are 12 teams in each. There's actually more in Division One, and then we're just playing for the Final Four. We've looked at maybe moving it to the Final 6, but then you're adding a week. Boarding schools come into play with that when it comes to Thanksgiving and breaks, and then the basketball coaches are clamoring for their athletes, especially at the smaller schools, which is totally understandable. If you've got 98 boys in your school and you're fielding a football team and a basketball team and all these other things, there's probably some overlap in dual sport athletes. So that's one of the things I think I've said over the years, like you would be amazed at the quality of coaches at the private school level that probably will never get the respect or the accolades or whatever it is. Like I look at guys like Mike Beal and Steven Alexander, who's now moved on to Georgia, and even Shannon Taylor. And I can go down a list to Coach Harlow and like it's unique. We have 26 boys on our team, and you're going to play a season like that and try to do what you've always done and be successful. And so you've got to be able to work around those parameters and homework and student athletes, and I have a job. And so it makes it unique towards the end of the season, especially as that winds down. You get in playoff mode and you're like, okay, we got a home game or we not? How's this going to seed itself out? Most of the times the head-to-head comes into play, and we go from there.
Well, good deal. Well, hey, we thank you so much for coming on the podcast On the Hash with Hatfield. We wish you and the Seahawks all the best as you have game number 3 coming up, the home opener at the Sportsplex in Virginia Beach. Going out there and support Atlantic Shores in the area football scene as they take on Norfolk Christian Friday, September the 8th, a 7 p.m. kickoff. And I look forward to seeing you, my friend, out there pretty soon, getting the chance to call one of those games at the Plex. And I love the background, by the way. You got Lombardi on there. Is that Jack Lambert as well?
Jack Lambert. That's my guy, my favorite player of all time. I got Jack Lambert. I got my Rashad Jennings jersey. I was fortunate enough to coach him. Some of my former players. I got an LCA picture from when I coached there against Atlantic Shores here at the school when we used to play here. And one of my former coaches was the water boy in that picture. So it's kind of really odd how that picture ended up on my wall. And we were sitting here one day, he goes, "That's me." And I'm like, "Wait, what?" It is. And so we had a pretty good laugh about it. But hey, congrats to you. I know there was a lot of change, but I feel like I see your face all over YouTube now. I don't know what show I'm tuning into, and now we got field hockey going on. That's
field hockey. We've got football. We got Coach Young and me back on Saturday mornings. We'll get you on that. We decided to keep him away. We don't want him to jinx you just yet. We want to wait till that's down the road. And by the way, I'm not a Steelers fan, as you know, an Arizona Cardinals fan. So you broke my heart in Super Bowl 43 after Larry Fitzgerald caught it from Kurt Warner. And then Aaron Francisco decided to let Ben Roethlisberger and Santonio Holmes be heroes at the end. But I will say this. Two things. One, my Virginia Preps Richmond reporter, Danny Lewis, has boldly predicted Pittsburgh over San Francisco in the Super Bowl, and his picks are usually pretty on point, which is crazy. And two, in the fantasy football league I'm in with some guys, some fellows from Hometown Sports Productions in the Sportsplex, and Coach Young actually made this pick for me because we're in a keeper league, and the other picks were you had to go draft, and I was at Norfolk State basketball team camp that day, so he decided to be my cohort. We'll share the winnings, which is probably not going to happen. He took Kenny Pickett for me, so I got to root for Pickett to have a big year for you guys this year.
We'll do it. It's looking better. I went to training camp last year with my sons and a former player, and we had a blast watching, but such a different atmosphere this year compared to last when it was kind of like the new start, the post-Ben era. So, yeah, I'm an addict. I love my Steelers, Pirates, and Penguins, and so, I can't get enough. I hope Pickett can pull it through, and it looks great so far. So I know the preseason means absolutely nothing, but we'll see what happens this Sunday.
That's right. A big one on Friday night, the Seahawks and the Ambassadors, Atlantic Shores, Norfolk Christian at the Plex. And Sunday, Wayne's Steelers take on the 49ers. Thank you so much, my friend. We'll do this again sometime, and have a good one.
All right, you too. Thank you.
That is Coach Wayne Lance of Atlantic Shores with us on the Hash with the Hatfield. We'll come back.